I found the pawn ticket in the pocket of her apron, thin as a dried leaf, edges soft from being folded and unfolded, the print faded a little, the date bright as a bruise. I stood under the kitchen light, the bulb a bit too white, the floor cool under my feet, and the taste in my mouth turned to metal. The clerk at the shop would look at me like a man who had walked in late to his own life. The little black tray would carry a ring, not the one I had given her, not the circle we bought with paint on our hands and coffee on our breath. A stranger's ring would lie there under glass, and my voice, the voice I used to use in boardrooms and at banquets, would fall to a whisper. How long? How long have you been carrying this alone? I used to know where to stand in important rooms. I used to pick the chair with the better sightline. I used to feel the air shift when I spoke. People laughed at my jokes because my name on a document could push a week in the direction they wanted. People texted me at midnight with numbers that mattered. People waited for my yes like it was warm weather after a long storm. I had a glass door with my title on it. I had a calendar that looked like proof of importance. I had a parking space that told strangers who I was before I even opened my mouth. I spoke in numbers and metaphors. I spoke in futures, and the future agreed until it didn't. One deal swallowed another, then another, a snake eating a bigger snake, loans stacked like plates in a sink. No one wanted to wash. A vendor called with a tone I had not heard before, the careful tone of a doctor telling a man that the life he has been rehearsing in his head is not the life he is going to get. I said we were fine. I said this quarter would sing. I said a lot of things that sounded like courage and tasted like fear. The music ended on a Tuesday. By Friday, my phone was quiet enough to hear my own breath. At home, the light changed. Bills arrived in tidy stacks, envelopes with windows like tiny mouths. The refrigerator hummed too loud. The sink dripped like a metronome. I wore an old suit to the kitchen table and pretended that silence was strategy. I scrolled job boards and invented reasons to say no. Too junior, too far, too temporary. Words that meant I do not want to stand at the bottom of any staircase. Mara cooked eggs like a ritual, cracked them into a pan that had already seen 3 apartments, salted them with a pinch. I used to love the pinch that said we are together, we are eating, we are fine. Our son learned to talk around me. Our daughter laughed smaller. A framed print disappeared from her wall, a blank rectangle above her desk that glowed like a missing tooth. I noticed and did not ask. The apartment felt like a train car after everyone has stepped off warm air still. The echo of footsteps going somewhere else. The pawn ticket told the truth I had been avoiding. Tuition paid somehow while our account was thin as tissue. The ring, her ring gone to keep our son in class, to keep his world from shrinking, because mine had. My chest felt like a room with no chairs. I said, "When were you going to tell me?" She turned off the burner, wiped the counter, met my eyes. "When were you going to ask?" The sentence clicked shut, like a door, not slammed, just shut, and the click travelled down the hall. That night, I walked until streetlights blurred into a single glowing rope. I remembered a kitchen with fresh paint and cheap coffee, the way she had held out her hand, the way I slid a small ring on a small finger, the promise so light it flew. I remembered how pride had grown heavy on my shoulders, how I had mistaken weight for worth. By morning I understood a plain thing. I could keep my pride or I could keep my family. Not both. I set the suit back in the closet, I rolled my sleeves, I made a lunch I could carry. I stood in the doorway and said, "I am going to work. Anywhere that will have me." And her eyes softened a fraction enough light to see the floor. The warehouse smelled like shrink wrap and dust like tape and cardboard like the underside of a city. Men half my age moved like cranes, smooth, efficient, joking about nothing, humming under their breath. A friend's cousin said they needed bodies. He said it kindly like a life raft. I grabbed it like a man who had decided that swimming in place is not a plan. I signed a form with a stubby pen on a chain. My name looked different when it wasn't trying to impress anyone. The first morning I almost explained myself. I almost said department head. I almost said quarter on quarter. I almost said my old title out loud like an amulet. No one asked. The only question was, can you help with this? Can you move that? Can you be here? Saturday. I moved. I came. The body is a slow teacher. It makes you honest whether you want to be or not. My hands found new work, pull stack keys, strap roll, sign for a delivery, with my name in marker, peel, labels, count boxes, slice tape, rewrap, a busted corner nod at a joke, drink, water, standing up. Time turned into something you could feel in your legs. A good day was measured by how many pallets left the dock, by how few mistakes we made, by how well we moved around each other like a team that had practiced without language. On Friday, the foreman tossed me a pair of gloves with stone written across the cuff. The marker had bled into the fabric. The name fit different, not bigger, truer. We ate tacos from a truck with our elbows on our knees. Leo told a story about his mother's garden. Drew showed me a photo of a baby that looked like all babies and also like someone he would jump in front of a train for. I went home with dust on my sleeves and a soreness that felt like proof. The kids watched me put my boots by the door. Mara watched me set a lunch container in the sink. Her look was not pity, not triumph, a small respect, and respect is a kind of air. I breathed better. We ate cheap food that smelled like Victory paper bags that crackled grease that marked the table like confetti. We ate on plates with hairline cracks that never mattered. Our son told a story about a teacher who tried to be funny and wasn't. Our daughter rolled her eyes and smiled. I listened without planning my next line, without thinking about margins or optics or any other word that does not belong at a kitchen table. The walls didn't move. The room felt warmer. Sometimes that is the only change that matters. I slept like a man who had set something down. In the morning, I woke before the alarm, made coffee in the quiet, watched steam rise like a small sermon. Pride did not vanish, it shifted it. Learned to stand somewhere else on a concrete floor under a fluorescent hum next to a stack of boxes that did not care who I used to be. I took the pawn ticket to the shop, slid it across a glass case that reflected my tired face. The clerk disappeared into a back room that smelled like metal, and Luck came out with a black velvet square, placed a ring under the light. Not ours. Gold forgets, he said, it melts, it becomes... People like that about it. He was kind, the way people are kind when they have seen every kind of story walk through a door. I wanted the exact circle back, the exact weight I had slid on her finger in a kitchen that smelled like paint and hope. The world is not a catalogue. I left with empty hands and a full ache. On the walk home, I stopped at a pharmacy. The spinning rack near the greeting cards held rings in clear boxes, promises next to lighters, vows next to batteries. I chose a plain band that cost less than a good dinner. I held it in my palm like a small vow that might be enough if I chose to live it. At our table, I set the ring down. My voice was simple. I cannot give you back what you gave up. I can only give you what I owe now, attention effort hours that show humility that stays. I was sorry fewer words than I used on strangers. She touched the ring with one finger, did not pick it up. Looked at me like a page she was deciding to keep reading. Silence can be a wall, and silence can be a bridge. This one felt like a bridge. She nodded once. We crossed, We did not open wine. We opened the banking app. We drew a budget like people who live on the ground. Rent, food, bus passes. A column for small joys because a life without small joys is a plan for resentment. Saturday, I took our daughter to a thrift store that smelled like cedar and old stories. She found a jacket that made her stand taller without noticing. I paid with cash folded twice. At a small table in a crowded cafe, she asked if we could linger. My eyes stung in a way that had nothing to do with steam. There are rings you wear on a finger, and there are rings you build with habits. A circle of showing up, a circle of apologies, kept a circle of ordinary days linked until they shine. I slid the pharmacy band into the drawer. I did not need to see it to remember what it meant. The knock came on a Wednesday. 2 people in dark suits, clipboard words like overdue and escalate, numbers that blurred. My stomach fell through the floor. I moved money with a thumb before my brain caught up. Shame arrived on the same breath. Not at the amount, at the reflex. The old reflex. To buy quiet when I should earn it. A week later, the kitchen held more people than chairs. Lucas slid a thick envelope across the table. "Every dollar you transferred is here, Dad." His voice did not tremble. His eyes did not gloat. He needed me to feel the edge without letting me fall. He hired a friend to play the part, to show me how quickly I reached for the wrong tool, how easily I mistook applause for love, comfort for care. My face burned. My chest lifted. I almost argued. I almost defended. I did not. I listened. Sophie confessed a mess on purpose, a clutter she had not cleaned, a glass she had let sit, a sink she had let fill, not to humiliate me, to force me into presence, to make me choose the work of staying over the performance of sulking. I said the cleanest sentence I own. I was wrong. Relief moved through the room like warm air. We laughed the laugh people use when they are putting down heavy boxes. We ate noodles. We washed dishes, shoulder to shoulder. The sound of plates in water felt like a hymn. Later, a small park, a cold bench, a night that teaches. I thought about men. I admire men who fix hinges and keep promises and apologize without a speech. I thought about fathers who never say I was wrong because they confuse silence with strength. I did not want to be brave like that anymore. In the morning, I pressed a square of paper to the fridge. Not a manifesto, a list. Filter the water pitcher. Take out recycling, wipe the stove. After cooking, call the insurance office before Friday. The handwriting was mine. The life was ours. Mara poured coffee and slid a cup toward me like a woman handing back a passport. I said thank you and meant the coffee and the gesture and the chance. Work steadied me. So did place, so did routine. I learned the names of the guys on the dock. Learned who liked to joke and who needed quiet. Learned the sound of a pallet. Jack that wanted oil. Learned how a day can change because you tightened one strap the right way. I learned to like my own company again. There was a woman at the dance hall who liked how I told stories. The dance hall had started as a way to sweat out the noise in my head. Then it became a stage I didn't deserve. This woman called me gentleman, leaned in when I spoke, laughed at jokes that were not funny, and made them feel like they were. After months of feeling invisible, I let myself be seen, even if it was by a mirror that only loved lights and reflections. I told myself it was harmless, an ego on a leash, a small, private applause. The heat wave hit on a Thursday. The air conditioning failed. The floor turned tacky under our shoes. The lights stayed bright like they were trying to prove something. I moved too fast, spun too many times, forgot to eat, forgot to drink, forgot that a body has rules. The room tilted. My knees vanished. The ceiling went white and square. The monitor counted without mercy. and the lipstick smile at the foot of the bed thinned into a line. A door closed. The quiet that remained sounded like truth. Mara came without a camera. Ethan came with a magazine, sat by the window, turned pages quietly. Sophie slipped in with a bag of oranges, peeled one, handed me a section like a sacrament. No one asked about the woman. No one demanded a confession. They tucked blankets pressed. The nurse button laughed at the bad soup, told me about the dog's new trick, about a neighbour's broken car, about small things that meant we were still us. In the hospital garden, on a bench that had held 1,000 stories, I said pride is not armour, it is blindness. Mara watched sparrows hop like punctuation on a low hedge. Eyes can open. She said, I said I am sorry. She did not recite a list. She let the apology land. She let it work. I went home to a bed that knew where it squeaked. I slept without dreaming of applause. In the morning, I texted the dance hall I won't be in for a while. I meant it without bitterness. I wasn't quitting dance. I was quitting the version of me that danced for witnesses. Temptation did not disappear. It never does. It became quieter when my days were full of useful tired. Quieter when my nights sounded like a home that forgives you. On Thursdays, I started helping at the senior centre, carrying chairs, filling paper cups, learning names, learning who needed a joke and who needed silence. A man with nervous hands asked if it was too late to learn. I said we start by standing. We stood. He shook. I steadied. The old teacher in me returned, without a podium, without applause, just 2 feet, finding the floor. A woman in blue sneakers cried because she could not turn without stepping on her partner. I said, look up, not down. Feel where he is. Trust will tell you before your eyes do. She lifted her chin, tried again, and the turn happened. Small, perfect, ordinary, as breathing. I began to measure a good night by the number of smiles at the door, not the volume of claps in the room. I came home with tired feet and a light chest. I made tea and washed 2 mugs and did not narrate the sacrifice to anyone, not even myself. Home learned our new rhythm. We argued about the kettle whistle and apologized before the water cooled. I fixed the loose hinge on the trash bin. I oiled the squeak in the bedroom door. I put daisies in a jar because roses felt like a billboard, and I wanted a porch light. Mara touched the glass and said, thank you, they're cheerful. The air changed. Gratitude does that. Lucas asked me to look at the books, not the glossy kind, the money kind. We sat at his table with a calculator that thunked more than clicked. Here's what you do, I said, and here's what you do dangerously. We made a plan with margins instead of miracles. He breathed easier. I did too. Sophie invited us to a cafe that smelled like espresso and new paint. Her collages hung at eye level, receipts stitched with thin gold thread into constellations. I cried without sound because pride had moved from my chest to my eyes. Some nights I texted, need anything from the store, and Mara replied milk, or just you. I walked home slower, warmer, wondering how many years I had spent sprinting past a happiness that had always preferred a walking pace. People kept asking if we would remarry. New Year's morning, 2 mugs steam like thin ghosts, I said. People keep asking. Mara folded a towel. People like labels. She said they are easy to shove. Do you want to? I asked with my eyes. No, she said gently. I want to stay, and I want you to stay. That is already the promise. We did what couples do when the paperwork does not match the practice. We took ornaments off a thrift store tree and set them in a shoebox lined with soft tissue. I held the chair while she reached for the top. Don't fall, I said. "I'm not falling," she answered. "I'm reaching—" The sentence settled into my bones. We returned, a library book before the fine. We made soup without a recipe and declared it perfect because it kept us warm. We shared the bus on Thursdays so I could pick up the grandkids from soccer. I clapped at goals and tied laces and learned that grass stains are a form of currency. We texted simple messages that carried weight. Milk or just you. Almost home. Want tea? Yes. I took the plain band from the drawer and set it on the counter again. "This is not ceremony," I said. "This is a marker, a reminder of the day I chose the floor over the fall." She slid it onto the hand that does the work. It looked right there where handles are held and pans are lifted and notes are written. We did not post a photo. We washed dishes. We let the ring become a habit instead of a headline. Spring leaned in with strawberries at the market. Mara walked the aisles not to sell, to taste, to wave, to be recognized as a person with time. She met Dr. Frank at the community garden, a gentle man who talked about soil like a cousin who could coax tomatoes through a week of unexpected cold. Jealousy rose like a weed and went down again when I remembered that love is a job with daily tasks, and I had finally learned how to clock in. Sometimes I joined them, sometimes I didn't. We all fit somehow puzzle pieces from different boxes that still made a picture when you were patient. On a bus ride to the soccer field, rain racing, the glass memory played a reel. Our 20s had been all hustle second-hand, furniture weekend shifts, the thin joy of making rent by a nail's breadth. Mara cooked for 5 on a budget for 2. I measured success by titles on doors and how many people stood when I walked in. When Ethan was born, I bought a briefcase and swore I would never carry a plastic bag again, as if dignity could be purchased by material. When Lucas struggled in school, Mara sat with him at the kitchen table, stood in the doorway later with a hand on her back, and another day starting in her eyes. I told myself I would make it up to her someday. Someday stretched into a habit, and the habit hardened into a posture I learned to call personality. I stepped off the bus and cold air hit my teeth. 30 kids swarmed like a school of fish, slippery and loud. I clapped until my palms stung. The older scored. The younger tripped and laughed, grass in his mouth like a joke. I felt a small knot behind my ribs loosen the knot that pride had tied. After practice, I sat in the car with Ethan, the heater, ticking. "I owe you an apology," I said, "for making you feel like a babysitter instead of a son." He kept his eyes on the windshield. "Thanks for saying it," he said. "Let's try to be better at being in the same room." It was not cinematic. Relief still moved through me like heat. Lucas asked me to look at the books again. The plan held. We returned the staged debt to the envelope where Mara had kept it safe. We learned a kind of pride that has room for help. Sophie's cafe night smelled like espresso and new paint. I bought the smallest piece and asked her to sign the back. For Dad, she wrote "Who Learned to Look." Portland gave us a windstorm 4 days before Christmas. Power blinked and died. Half the neighborhood went dark. We lit candles and stacked blankets and turned the apartment into a soft fort. The grandkids unrolled sleeping bags that smelled faintly of campfire and detergent. Sophie's little dog trembled until I made a tent from a quilt and read by phone light. Words landed like snow. We ate soup warmed on the gas stove. Someone hummed a carol and the wrong notes sounded right. In the dark, we told the kind of stories that only come out when anything brighter than a flame feels rude. Thanksgiving had been a rehearsal. A long table with leaves added, faces shining and blurring and reappearing as people moved. I reached for a dumpling. Crisp gave way to tender. Still the best, I said. The room hummed with a thunder no one fears. Grace. Laughter. The clink of a fork. The shuffle of a chair. The sound of a life returning to itself. Angela came by once unannounced. Hair, immaculate smile, rehearsed the kind of smile that has learned what a camera wants. "Is Douglas home?" she asked, peering past Mara as if the lens might be in the hallway. "He's at the store," Mara said. "You can wait." She perched like a swan in a parking lot. "Things got complicated," she said. "When I walked in, we were good together. We could be again. I lined up bananas on the counter, buying time with trivial order. We were exciting," I said, "but not good." She held the smile for a second longer, the way a dancer holds a pose after the music stops. "I have soup," Mara said. "You're welcome to a bowl, and then you should go." Angela declined the soup and the dignity, and left in a small storm of perfume. The door clicked. The apartment exhaled. I set the bananas in a bowl and felt grateful for fruit and for boundaries. January gave us blue mornings and clear breath. I volunteered more at the senior center. I learned which hallway light flickered, which lock stuck in the cold, which man needed the same joke every Thursday to feel like the week still held a rhythm he knew. Sometimes I showed a couple how to pivot without stepping on each other. "Look up, not down," I said. "Feel where your partner is. Trust will tell you before your eyes do." In a kitchen at home, I tried my own advice. "Look up, not down. Feel where she is. Trust." One ordinary Tuesday, the power came back on and nobody cheered because the candles had taught us something we did not want to forget. Quiet was not the absence of noise, it was the presence of care. I rinsed a plate and set it in the rack and listened to the hum a home makes when it forgives you. I still had the pharmacy band in the drawer. I still wore it sometimes when the day felt slippery. I still touched that small circle, like a habit that kept my hands from reaching for applause. We did not remarry. We stayed. We cooked. We argued. We apologized sooner. We laughed at nothing. We watched a plant refuse to die on the sill. We answered the door to a grandchild holding a drawing in 3 colors. On the fridge a list remained: filter the water pitcher, take out recycling, wipe the stove, call the insurance office. New items joined: pick up Oliver Thursday, grab cilantro on the way home, bring tape to Lucas. The handwriting changed as people added. The list became a map, a love letter written in chores. I still walked by the river sometimes when rain made the city shine like melted stars. "Do you miss it?" Mara asked on one of those walks, the noise. Sometimes, I said honestly, but quiet used to scare me because it left room for regret. Now it feels like room for care. She nodded. We kept walking side by side, the kind of silence that keeps you warm. When spring softened the air, we took the long bus across town to the market. The vendors, who used to be customers, waved at Mara like a friend who had finally been given her mornings back. She tasted strawberries. She traded recipes with Mrs. Lee. She introduced me to Dr. Frank with a smile that had no apology in it. I shook his hand and felt steady. I had spent so much time guarding a title. This here was better to guard the shape of a day, the small ways a man can be useful without an audience. The boys grew taller, grass stains gave way to algebra, Lucas's business steadied because margin is a better god than miracle. Sophie's dog aged into a gentler pace and slept at my feet when the rain was loud. I fixed small things, a hinge, a switch, a broken slat. I texted. Simple things need anything on my way, almost home. I made tea. I remembered to ask, "How was your day?" And then I waited for the answer. I did not become a different person. I became more of the person I was supposed to be. A man who knows the weight of a box, the rhythm of a dishwasher, the courage it takes to say I was wrong. A man who knows that gold forgets that people can choose not to. A man who knows the price of quiet and why it is worth everything he has. The story does not end with a banner or a speech. It ends at a small table by a window, 2 cups of tea cooling slowly. Outside, the sky holds its breath blue, deepening toward night. Inside, the ordinary thunder rolls on, steady and close. I reach across the table. She puts her hand in mine. We stay, and the room gets warm again.